I grew up next to the German border. Went there with my parents to visit Germany for shopping, as many of you from the older generation did too. I remember well the stone, I remember the customs officers, I remember the guns, a few guns, dogs, some fences. It was the time of the Wirtschaftswunder. It was the time when there was a mixture of jealousy on the one hand and deep respect for what the German people had accomplished. Except for that one Sunday in 1974. And we were better. At the end of the 70s, the Rote Armee-Fraktion, Baader-Meinhof group, was active in the border region. And about 5 to 6 kilometers from where I lived, there was an assault on custom officers, and 2 of them were killed. The result was heavy armed defense with armored cars, machine guns. But still, we felt connected to the German people, despite this threat. We felt connected to them because we spoke their language, because we visited them for shopping, but also in the meantime for holidays. And of course, we watched their television with our own cultural ambassador, Der Rudi. In 1979, I started my study to become a teacher. And one of my subjects was geography. So I traveled, I had a good reason to travel all over Europe. And I also visited some communist countries. And I saw it with my own eyes. The Iron Curtain, the human creation that divided Europe for many, many years. I also was in Poland in 1981, when Solidarność came up for the democratic right of the Polish people. It started there. And I was standing in a bus, again, without air conditioning, for 2 hours at Checkpoint Charlie, waiting for someone to come out and take a look at our passports. One of my other subjects was history, and there I learned about the Berlin Conference of 1884-1885, where the Western democracies, or the Western countries at that time more, split up the African continent just because of their interest to organize things well for them. Many of you may know that millions of peoples have died due to the tribal wars, which were caused by these lines drawn on a paper on one Sunday morning or afternoon. And still, on a daily basis, people are dying or running today because of these lines. And what about the Iron Curtain? Where is it now? This piece of concrete, this line of concrete and steel, except for some pieces in the museum. How many lives have been spoiled, spilled, and destroyed? It is estimated that about 2,500 people have died as a direct result of the Iron Curtain. How much welfare and money has evaporated because of this idea? Several studies have shown that on the average, we estimate that only the reunification of Germany has cost about 1,600 billion euros. I'm not saying that we shouldn't reunify Germany, but we could have used this money, if they hadn't started with the Iron Curtain, in a far better way in the world. The end of the 80s was overwhelming to me, as well as for many people from my generation. We saw with our own eyes that people were able to break down the most violent, threatening borders we had ever seen. Michael Gorbachev did a good job in the former Soviet Union. The Polish people turned the system into a democratic system. And Germany was reunified. The people in Timisoara revolted against the dictatorial regime of Ceausescu. And it was 1979, the time of Pink Floyd, The Wall. Imagine, I was 17, starting to study as a teacher.
We don't need no education. We don't need no thought control. No dark sarcasm in the classroom.
I hope you can imagine I was 17, just left my own diapers. It was a little bit disturbing for me. But let's go back to borders. Maybe we can take a close look at, or just a quick look, at the map of Europe in 1910, and 1930, and 2010. Or maybe a little bit more next door. Province of Limburg. Can you find it? 14th century. Oh, there it is. A little bit different shape, but it's there at least. And this is how we know it now. What we don't know, especially after the previous speaker, we don't know what the border will look like in 100 years. Threat? Problem? No, absolutely not. Because what happens, what scientific research shows us, is that the inhabitants of the province of Limburg have a high level of intercultural competences. It's logic, because we had Spanish influence, we had French influence, we had German influence. I believe we even had some Dutch influence. We even created a system in which babies need an ID card to travel across borders. Wonderful. And we raised the children in the awareness that if you lose this document, you're lost. It gives you an identity when you're abroad. You need it, absolutely, to be a person, an identity when you're abroad. And don't forget it, don't lose it, because you don't exist anymore. In my opinion, it would be good if we would change borders into frontiers. Both words are a translation of the Dutch word grens. But a border, for me, is a limit. It's an expression of interest, of power, mostly by, as a result of self-declared sovereignty of national states. A frontier offers a challenge, a limit you want to pass. So I would like to raise, and we're doing that at home, raise children in the context of frontiers. Because if we succeed in changing from borders to frontiers, we will create a much better world, because the children will see the border not as a limit where to stop, but to cross and go over and meet other people, learn about other cultures, learn different languages, broaden the horizon. But we need some change, fundamental changes in thinking, in our thinking. And I think the most important group there is the group of parents, but it's also the most complex group, because we have an enormous variety in characteristics and backgrounds of parents. And thank God, we live in a democratic part of the world where each and every parent has the possibility to decide within the legal framework about the education of his or her child. A second possibility would be a change in education. And I believe it's still very complex, but that's the thing we should do. Professor Colin Robinson stated in his TED Talk in February 2006 that the Western educational system can be determined as an industrial process where we push young creative children, like on a production line, through classes, based, as he mentions it, year of construction. Where cognition is the only relevant part or aspect of intelligence, and where the average is the standard. So it's only fitting scientifically for less than 1% of our children, the system we have created. And there are wonderful initiatives for cracking the system, but the tendency still is, and even more and more, on regulation and monitoring. Mostly because politicians want to have influence on education in the name of the well-spending of public money, you know. What they do is that they create a system in which teachers are becoming more and more administrators instead of coaches of the learning of students. And students, pupils, are benchmarked or over-benchmarked towards the standard instead of to their capabilities, possibilities, ambitions, and talents. Maybe we could take an example from the people in Eastern Germany, not to revolt against the Hague or national governance, no, absolutely not. But what they did is that they changed their experience reality into a desired reality. And they did not only change the system, they changed their lives, they changed their future, and they changed the future of their children by taking an active part or an active role. I was very lucky, or I am very lucky, that I had the possibility to realize some of my ideas in education. Most recently as the chairman of the expert team for Euregional education in the province of Limburg. A fantastic group of experts who are working on the internationalization of education. We're starting in primary education, and what do we do there? We bring children together. We don't organize formal lessons, we bring them together in activities. They're dancing together, they're singing together, cooking together, making theater, etc. And you know what happens there? Is that these young children feel the need for communication. They want to communicate with the other children. So there is an internal motivation to learn the foreign language. And what we do is to assist them there, to help them. Not by formal grammar lessons or literature or whatever, no. Help them to use the language as a means of communication. About 40 schools in Limburg are participating in these schools, about 2,000 young pupils, young students annually. In secondary education, we continue this line by encouraging people, young students, to participate in exchanges, in projects, in visits, etc. And we encourage them to improve their linguistic skills in the neighbor languages, especially for German and French. And we have one pre-vocational location where students are encouraged to, in a massive way, to participate in international orientation programs. About 90% of the pupils leaving school there are or have obtained a Goethe certificate which is worldwide recognized in German language. So it's pre-vocational school. 10% of the students there participate in international job orientation programs. Just like Tom, for example. Tom's world was his neighborhood. He's working now as a heavy-duty vehicle mechanic in Aachen at the Aziag. And he came there because he did his job orientation there. The colleagues in the in vocational and higher education continue the programs. We have Erasmus programs, visits, exchange programs, etc., etc. So it's a very widespread package of activities that we do. And we encourage students to study abroad. Maybe I'll give you another example before I go to my final conclusions. Brit. Brit is a girl who is participating in one of our job orientation programs, and we have tested her that she would be very fitting to the profession of mechanical engineer. Brit is 16 years old, says, well, very nice, thank you very much, but I would like to study fashion and design in Utrecht. Okay, Brit, but you have enormous possibilities. Brit, as polite as she is, said, okay, I give you the possibility to convince me, so I'll do the work. And she took part in the job orientation. She did her work fantastically. But at the end presentation, she said, thank you very much for all the opportunities, and I'm going to study fashion and design in Utrecht. But, ladies and gentlemen, something must have happened. Something must have touched her. Because Brit is now a second-year student at the RWTH Aachen in mechanical engineering and business economics. So it has a result. Okay, the possibilities are enormous for our children. If we could decrease these borders. For example, the region of Aachen has a lack of professional cure and care people. In 2028, 3,000 people. Please imagine that these people would have an average income per year of 35,000 euros, which is, I think, quite realistic. If we could provide those 3,000 professionals within 10 years, it would bring 100 million euros annually extra income to our region. And that excludes still the multiplier. The future generation is waiting for us. Yes, yes, we are increasing their linguistic competences. We are increasing their intercultural competences, their entrepreneurial competences. And of course, there is an economic interest in this program. Yes, it is. But on the other hand, we are also raising a generation of children who is able to experience the limits of borders as challenges of frontiers, who are able to see what the strength of their will, of their mind and their activities is. So a generation which will go abroad and take their chances. We are the generation that has to help them, that has to clean or erase the borders in their minds. We owe them, because we are also the generation which created it, or at least conserved them. And if we have to do it, and if we are the generation to help them, then let's do it together. Parents, for the future of your children. Decision makers, for the future of your region. Ladies and gentlemen, globalization is starting next door and now. Let's do it together. I'm in. I hope you are too. Thank you.